Don't treat Singapore like every other stop in Southeast Asia, or you'll spend too much, see too little, and possibly get fined for something you didn't even know was illegal. In this video, I'll walk you through the 10 biggest mistakes tourists make on their first visit to Singapore, and what to do instead so you leave saying it was worth every dollar. On the surface, Singapore looks easy. English is widely spoken, the metro is spotless, and everything feels safe and organized. But that everything works feeling can lull you into thinking you don't need to plan, and that's when people end up stuck in the heat, overpaying for food and drinks, or rushing between attractions with no energy left to enjoy any of them. The most common mistake is underestimating the tropical climate. Most first-timers land, drop bags at the hotel, and immediately plan a big walking day. Merlion, Marina Bay Sands, Gardens by the Bay, maybe even Chinatown, all on foot. Singapore is hot and humid all year, with temperatures often in the high 20s to low 30s and heavy humidity that makes short walks feel like workouts. You'll notice this after an hour around Marina Bay. Your clothes stick to you, the sun reflects off the water, and suddenly that quick stroll between the Merlion and the Helix Bridge feels endless. Locals and experienced visitors avoid long outdoor walks in the middle of the day, especially between late morning and mid-afternoon when humidity and UV are highest. The impact is simple. You burn out by lunchtime, retreat into a random mall, and end up skipping the evening views because you're exhausted. Instead, flip your day. Do outdoor spots like Gardens by the Bay, Merlion Park, and the Singapore River in the early morning or late afternoon, and spend midday inside air-conditioned spaces like the National Gallery, the Art Science Museum, or simply exploring linked underground malls around City Hall and Marina Square. The next mistake is thinking Singapore is just Marina Bay and Sentosa. Instagram has done a great job of convincing people that Singapore is basically three things: the Marina Bay Sands rooftop, the super trees at Gardens by the Bay, and the beach clubs on Sentosa. These are impressive, but if that's all you see, you miss the neighborhoods that actually show how the city lives. Places like Tiong Bahru, Kampong Glam, Little India, and Joo Chiat. Here's the fix. Keep Marina Bay and Sentosa, but build a morning in Tiong Bahru for indie cafes and classic hawker food, an afternoon wandering the colorful lanes and mosques of Kampong Glam, and an evening in Little India for temples and late-night eating. These districts are easy to reach by MRT, and they're where you start to feel like you've actually visited Singapore rather than just its postcard skyline. This is where the food mistakes begin. Another rookie error is treating Singapore as too expensive for casual eating and defaulting to malls and Western chains. In reality, some of the best and cheapest food is at hawker centers, open-air food courts where you can eat local dishes like Hainanese chicken rice, laksa, or char kway teow for roughly 4 to 7 Singapore dollars a plate at many centers. The second part of the food mistake is only eating at the most famous hawker stalls you've seen on TikTok or Netflix. Places like Lau Pa Sat or the Michelin star hawker in Chinatown are good, but queues can be huge and prices higher than in neighborhood centers, so you spend more time waiting than eating. A better approach is to use one big-name hawker as a bucket list stop, and then eat most meals in local centers such as Tiong Bahru Food Center, Maxwell Food Center, or suburban hubs where a full meal can still be a few dollars. Walk around, see where locals are queuing, and start with simple classics like chicken rice, roasted meats with rice, or noodle soups. They're affordable, filling, and safer choices if you're nervous about ordering. If this kind of detail is helping you plan, hit like. It tells me to keep making no-nonsense city guides like this. Because the city is small, people cram way too much into each day. Sentosa in the morning, Orchard Road shopping in the afternoon, Marina Bay at sunset, and Jewel at Changi in the evening. On paper, it looks doable, especially when you see how fast the MRT and taxis are. But moving between these zones, queuing, and walking between stations quietly eats your time and energy. You'll notice the tipping point around mid-afternoon on a day like that. You're cutting short beaches or rides on Sentosa to race back to town, then rushing through Gardens by the Bay just to tick it off before your expensive observation deck ticket. The result is a blur, and you leave with the sense that Singapore was fine but stressful, which is a shame because it's one of the easiest big cities in Asia to enjoy at a slower pace. Instead, give major areas their own anchor block. For example, one day that's mostly Sentosa with an easy evening in Clarke Quay or Boat Quay. One day for Marina Bay and Gardens by the Bay, and another day built around a couple of neighborhoods plus a hawker center and the Botanic Gardens or MacRitchie Reservoir for greenery. Another subtle trap is assuming hostels are the cheapest way to stay in Singapore because that's how it works in much of Southeast Asia. Local and expat travelers have pointed out that hostel beds can run from around 44 up to 100 Singapore dollars a night, while basic private rooms in budget hotels can be found from roughly 49 Singapore dollars and often feel better value. The real mistake is booking only on price without checking location and room type. Some ultra-cheap options are far from an MRT station or in windowless rooms, which means you waste time commuting or feel boxed in during the hottest parts of the day. A smarter move is to target budget hotels or guest houses in well-connected areas like Bugis, Lavender, Chinatown, or around Outram Park MRT. You may pay slightly more than a dorm bed, but you gain privacy, aircon you control yourself, and faster access to most sites, which is worth it on a 3 or 4 day trip. Now we need to talk about rules, because this is where fines come in. Singapore is famous for being the fine city, and that nickname exists because rules are genuinely enforced. Things like littering, chewing gum, eating or drinking on the MRT, and smoking outside designated areas can all attract fines. Recent official advisories also highlight that possessing or importing vapes is illegal, and there are liquor control zones where drinking on the street at certain hours is against the law. First-timers often assume these are urban legends or that enforcement is light, but locals will tell you it's taken seriously, especially on public transport where even a bottle of water can be frowned upon if you start drinking on the train. It's not about scaring you. It's about understanding that the clean, safe environment you enjoy is partly the result of these rules actually being followed. To avoid problems, keep it simple. No gum, no eating or drinking on buses and MRT, only smoke where it's clearly allowed, and don't litter even tiny things like cigarette butts. If you want to drink outdoors late, check whether you're in a liquor control zone and when local rules apply, or stick to bars and hawker centers where it's clearly permitted. One of the most expensive rookie mistakes is walking into the long bar at Raffles Hotel, ordering a Singapore Sling without looking at the price, and only later realizing that a single drink can run around 38 Singapore dollars before service and tax, with some recent visits reporting totals closer to 47 Singapore dollars once all charges are added. Expectation: it's just a cocktail. How bad can it be? Reality: you're paying for the historic setting and the ritual as much as the drink, and if you go at peak times, it can feel crowded and rushed on top of being expensive. If you love cocktail history and the idea of raffles, go in fully informed, treat it as a one-off experience, and budget for it. If you mainly want a good drink with a view, you might be happier nursing something more reasonably priced at a rooftop bar in the CBD, or simply enjoying a beer at a riverside spot in Clarke Quay or Boat Quay while you watch the city lights. A lot of first-timers either walk far more than is comfortable in the heat, or they buy a tourist transport pass expecting big savings that never really appear. In practice, regular adult card fares for MRT trips are typically around 1 Singapore dollar to just over $2 per ride depending on distance, and recent fare revisions have added only small increases per journey. You'll see this when you tap in and out. Most central rides barely cross the 2 Singapore dollars mark, which means you have to ride a lot in one day before an unlimited pass really pays off. At the same time, relying only on Google Maps walking routes underestimates how draining a 20-minute walk can be in the humidity. The sweet spot is to get a stored value card or simply use contactless payment on the MRT and buses, and not be shy about jumping on for just one stop to save your energy and stay in air conditioning. For late night or cross-island trips, taxis and ride-hailing are still reasonably priced compared with many Western cities, and they can save you a lot of time on a short itinerary. On the street, Singapore feels very safe, and official advice and long-time visitors often note that most classic tourist scams target locals more than short-term tourists. That safety can create a different problem. People become careless with online bookings for apartments, tours, SIM cards, and transfers, assuming anything with Singapore in the URL is legitimate. Recent reports highlight fake travel websites offering ultra-cheap luxury packages, bogus property listings for short-term rentals, and scam calls linked to SIM registrations and spoofed officials demanding personal or financial details. Some travelers have also been caught by suspiciously cheap online taxi or transfer booking sites that happily take payment, that never show up. To avoid these, book accommodation through established platforms or directly with recognized hotel brands, check operators against the official Singapore Tourism Board listings, and be wary of deals that look far below normal market prices. For SIM cards and eSIMs, buy from reputable telcos or at official airport counters, and never share passport or card details over unsolicited calls or links sent by messaging apps. Because flights transit via Singapore so often, a lot of people treat it as a necessary overnight rather than a base. Locals and seasoned travelers point out that, from Singapore, it's surprisingly easy to do day or overnight trips to places like Johor Bahru in Malaysia or Indonesia's nearby Riau Islands, which many tourists skip entirely. For example, you can cross into Johor Bahru for shopping and food or take a ferry to islands in the Riau group, with typical return ferry prices around 70 Singapore dollars depending on destination and operator. If you've already come this far, adding even one extra day for a quick side trip can make your Singapore stay feel more complete and help you appreciate how the city sits in the wider region. The fix is not to overcomplicate it. If you're on a tight schedule, keep your first visit focused on Singapore itself. But if you have 4 or 5 days, consider blocking one for a simple, well-reviewed day trip across the border or by ferry, booked through reputable operators rather than whatever pops up first in an ad. All of these mistakes have the same pattern. You underestimate the climate, overestimate how much you can cram in, or misunderstand how money and rules work here. The result is a trip that feels hotter, more expensive, and more rushed than it needs to, in a city that's actually one of the easiest places in Asia to travel if you play it smart. If you pace your days around the heat, mix the big icons with real neighborhoods and hawker centers, respect the rules on transport, gum and smoking, and think twice before blowing your budget on prestige drinks, you'll feel more like a clued-up local than a stressed tourist. That's when Singapore really shines. Efficient, safe, incredibly tasty, and full of small details you only notice when you're not rushing. If you want more straight-talk city guides like this, no fluff, just real mistakes and fixes, subscribe to the channel. And if this helped you plan your first Singapore trip, send it to the friend you're traveling with so you're both on the same page before you land.